Have you ever sat waiting for hours, holding on to the hope that someone you love would walk through the door, only to realize they never planned on showing up? That kind of silence, that kind of absence, can cut deeper than any wound. It isn't just about being forgotten, it's about being shown exactly where you stand in the hearts of the people you sacrificed everything for. My name is Patricia Henley. I am 76 years old, and I live in Lakewood, Colorado. For most of my life, I believed I had raised my children to be loyal, loving, and dependable. I gave them my time, my money, my heart, and every ounce of my strength. I thought I had built a family that would never abandon me in my old age, but I was wrong. After my hip surgery, I waited at the hospital doors for hours. My body ached, my spirit was weak, and my heart was filled with anticipation. But the children I raised never came. They left me sitting there alone, with nothing but the cold wind on my face and the sting of disappointment in my chest. In that moment, something inside me broke, but it also lit a fire I didn't know I still carried. That fire led me to make a decision that shocked everyone who heard it. I removed my children from my will and left everything to the nurse who had shown me the kind of care my own blood refused to give. Before we begin this story, please take a second to subscribe to this channel and tell us in the comments where you're watching from. Your presence here matters to me more than you know. When you share your location, it reminds us that this family we are building together stretches across the world, bound not by blood but by the power of stories, lessons, and compassion. And because I care about you, let me pause to say a prayer for you, my dear listener. I pray for your health, that your body stays strong, that every step you take is steady and free from pain. I pray for your peace, that even in moments of loneliness, you feel surrounded by love. I pray for your family, that those you care about never neglect you, never overlook your sacrifices, and never forget how much you matter. And if you are in your 60s, 70s, or 80s, I ask God to bless your days with comfort, dignity, and the joy of being cherished. Now let us begin my story. A story about a fall in the kitchen that led to surgery. A story about children who were too busy to care. A story about waiting at hospital doors until hope ran dry. And finally, a story about finding love, loyalty, and family in an unexpected place. I still remember that morning so clearly. The smell of apples and cinnamon filled my kitchen, the kind of smell that always reminded me of home, of comfort, of love. I was making muffins, my famous muffins that I've baked for decades. Every neighbor, every friend, every grandchild of mine has tasted them at one time or another. I wasn't thinking about much, just reaching for the vanilla on the top shelf. But in a single second, my life changed. My foot caught on the edge of the rug, and I went down hard. The pain in my hip was so sharp, it nearly took my breath away. I've had kidney stones, I've had childbirth, but nothing compared to this. I couldn't move. I couldn't even drag myself to the phone. The muffins kept burning in the oven while I lay there, staring at the ceiling, tears slipping down my cheeks. I thought, so this is how it feels to be helpless. By God's mercy, my neighbor Gladys came through the back door, like she often did when she needed something. She found me on the floor. Without her, I don't know how long I would have stayed there. She called the paramedics right away, and before I knew it, I was being lifted into an ambulance. Lying there with the siren screaming, all I could think about was calling my children. I wasn't worried about the pain. I was worried about whether they would come. I had always been there for them. Surely they would be there for me. At the hospital, the surgeon explained I'd need a hip replacement. He said I was healthy for my age and recovery was possible, but it would take weeks. He asked if I had family nearby who could help. I smiled and said, yes. I have 3 children, and they all live close. I believed those words as I said them. But part of me was already a little uneasy. I made the calls right away. David, my oldest, picked up on the first ring. Mom? What's going on? He asked. I told him about the fall, the fracture, and the surgery I would need. He sounded concerned, but his voice carried the weight of deadlines and meetings. Okay, I'll try to get out of work. Linda's busy tonight, but I'll do my best. Traffic's bad, but I'll come as soon as I can. I hung up, half relieved, half doubtful. Then I called Michelle. She answered while driving the twins to soccer. Oh, Mom. Are you alright? That sounds awful. I'll try to swing by after I drop them off. Maybe an hour, maybe more if traffic's rough. Her tone was caring, but hurried, her mind split in a dozen directions. And then came Robert Jr. Reaching him was like pulling teeth. 2 calls went straight to voicemail. When he finally answered, I told him what had happened. There was a pause too long. Mom, that's really bad timing. I've got a huge client presentation tomorrow. Can't David or Michelle handle it? You're at a hospital. They'll take good care of you. I forced a smile into my voice. Of course, honey. Focus on your work. I'll manage. But the moment I hung up, my chest ached. I remembered every sacrifice I had made for them. Driving 6 hours in a snowstorm when David had his appendix out. Watching Michelle's children every weekend for 2 months so she could save her marriage. Letting Robert Jr. move back home during his divorce. Cooking his favorite meals while he cried in the night. I had always been there. But now, where were they? That evening, David came to the hospital. He stayed less than an hour, pacing the room, glancing at his phone more often than at me. So, surgery's Thursday at 7, right? He asked over and over. Yes, 7, I said each time. Good. I'll try to stop by Thursday night. Friday's impossible, work is slammed. Maybe the weekend. I nodded, but my heart felt heavier with every word. My son, my firstborn, was penciling me into his calendar like a business appointment. The next evening, Michelle called. Mom, I couldn't make it today. Brandon was upset over math homework, and Brittany needed help with her essay. But I'll be there after surgery. Definitely. I wanted to believe her. I really did. But doubt was creeping in fast. Robert Jr.? No call at all. That night, I lay in the hospital bed listening to the beeping of machines and the footsteps in the hall. I stared at the ceiling and thought, when did my children stop needing me and start seeing me as a chore? I remembered my husband, Robert. He had been the glue that held us all together until his heart attack 3 years ago. I had tried to step into that role to keep everyone close. But now, it felt like my family was slipping through my hands no matter how hard I tried. During the night, a nurse came in, Carmen. Young, kind, and attentive. She checked my fluffed my pillow, and asked softly, Are you nervous about tomorrow? A little. It's my first major surgery. She smiled warmly. You'll be fine. Dr. Martinez is excellent. Do you have family coming to be with you? Yes, I said quickly. My children will be here. I wanted to believe it. I needed to believe it. But deep down, something told me the truth might be different. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept replaying old memories in my mind, the times I had shown up for them, no matter the cost to myself. And I wondered, would they show up for me now? That thought, more than the surgery itself, was what truly frightened me. When the morning of surgery came, I felt like a child again, helpless, anxious, clinging to hope. They wheeled me into the pre-op area at 6:30. I looked around at other patients, some with loved ones holding their hands, whispering prayers, promising to be there when they woke up. My bed sat by itself. I told myself they'll be here soon. They wouldn't miss this. But when the nurse asked, who should we call when the surgery is over? I hesitated. My first thought was David. He was the most responsible of the 3, the one who usually took charge. I gave his number, then Michelle's as backup. I didn't even mention Robert Jr. I already knew better than to expect him. As they rolled me into the operating room, I turned my head for one last look at the waiting area. Empty chairs. Not a single familiar face. My heart sank, but I swallowed the pain. Maybe they were just running late. Maybe traffic was bad. I tried to believe that. When I opened my eyes again, hours had passed. The sharp, unbearable agony of the broken hip had been replaced with a dull ache, softened by medicine. My throat was dry, my voice cracked when I whispered, water. A nurse I didn't recognize smiled kindly and spooned ice chips into my mouth. The surgery went very well, she said. Dr. Martinez will speak with you soon. I nodded grateful, but my eyes searched the room. Other patients were waking up too. Some had husbands holding their hands, some had daughters brushing hair from their foreheads, some had grandchildren standing nervously at their sides. I asked, Is my family here? The nurse hesitated, and in that pause, I already knew the answer. She said she'd check. When she came back, Dr. Martinez walked in with her. His face was cheerful. Patricia, the hip replacement was a success. The bone was stronger than expected, and there were no complications. You're going to recover well. I should have felt relief. I should have celebrated that news. But all I could ask was, are my children here? Did anyone come? His smile faltered. The front desk said David called after the surgery had already begun. He said he couldn't get out of a meeting but would try to come later. Michelle sent a text asking for updates. Robert Jr. hasn't contacted us. For a moment, the room seemed to spin. Not from the anesthesia, not from the painkillers, but from the hollow realization that once again, I was alone. They moved me to a private room with a view of the mountains. It was a beautiful view, but beauty doesn't comfort an empty chair. Every time footsteps approached, my heart leapt, only to fall again when it was just a nurse, a technician, or a volunteer with a food tray. Around 4 in the afternoon, my phone rang. It was David. Mom, how did it go? I'm so sorry I couldn't be there. That presentation dragged longer than expected. I'll come by tonight or tomorrow. You'll be okay till then, right? I forced a steady voice. Yes, I'll be fine. But when the call ended, my hands trembled. I wanted to scream, no, David, I'm not fine. I needed you today. Not tomorrow. Not next week. Today. Not long after, Michelle called. Mom, I heard from David that everything went well. Thank goodness. I wanted to be there, but Brandon had tutoring and Brittany had a college prep session. You understand, right? I'll visit tomorrow. Tomorrow. Always tomorrow. Robert Jr. didn't call at all. That evening, the night nurse, Betty, a woman close to my age, brought me broth, jello, and crackers. She adjusted my pillows and sat for a moment. First night after surgery is always the hardest, she said. But tomorrow you'll start walking. That's when healing begins. She must have seen the sadness in my eyes because she added softly, I've been here 30 years. I've seen every kind of family. Some rise to the occasion, some don't. Surgery has a way of showing who people really are. Her words struck me like a hammer. I had been making excuses for my children all day, telling myself they were busy, that they would come tomorrow. But maybe the truth was simpler. Maybe they didn't see me as a priority anymore. That night, I barely slept. Every noise in the hallway made me hope. Every shadow on the wall made me think. Maybe now they've arrived. But morning came and still no one had. Friday brought physical therapy. A young man named Kevin encouraged me as I clung to a walker, sweat running down my forehead. You're stronger than you think. Every step you take will make you better. I nodded, pushing through the pain. But inside, I wondered, stronger than I think? Perhaps. But am I strong enough to face this alone? Later that day, David called again. Mom, I hate to do this, but that client we've been chasing for months wants a meeting this afternoon. I'll see you tomorrow instead. Love you. Love you. 2 words so easy to say, yet meaningless without action. Michelle sent a text. So sorry, Mom. Brittany's sick. I'll visit when she feels better. I stared at my phone, my chest tight. Another excuse. Another broken promise. By evening, I realized something I hadn't wanted to face. Strangers had given me more care in 2 days than my own children had in years. Carmen came by often, not just to check vitals, but to talk. She showed me pictures of her kids, Miguel with his missing front teeth, Sophia dressed as a princess. Her eyes shone with pride as she spoke. I thought, when was the last time my children showed me that kind of pride? When was the last time they even spoke about me with warmth? Saturday morning, the discharge papers were ready. Dr. Martinez reminded me gently, you'll need someone to help at home. No stairs, no heavy lifting. Someone should check on you often. I nodded. Yes, my children will help. But even as I said the words, I didn't believe them anymore. An orderly wheeled me to the front entrance, where patients are picked up by their families. The doors slid open, and I was parked by the curb. I waited, clutching my small bag. 10 minutes passed. Then 30. Then an hour. 2 hours. Other patients were greeted with hugs, flowers, happy tears. One by one, they disappeared into cars filled with love. I sat alone. I called David 4 times. Voicemail, voicemail, voicemail. On the fourth try, he answered, irritated. Mom, didn't I say I'd be there around 2? It's only 3:30. I'm leaving now. Just wait another hour. Another hour. The wind grew colder. My hip throbbed from sitting too long. Families kept coming, embracing their loved ones, carrying them home. Still, I waited. Finally, Carmen walked out of the hospital, her shift over. When she saw me still sitting there, her eyes filled with disbelief. Mrs. Henley, you're still here? Hasn't anyone come for you? The concern in her voice broke me. Tears I had held back for days spilled over. They're coming, I whispered, even though I didn't believe it anymore. Carmen didn't argue. She just looked at me, then at her watch. Without a word, she turned and went back inside. 10 minutes later, she reappeared with her purse and car keys. Come on, she said gently. I'm taking you home. And in that moment, I realized something painful but true. The people I had given life to had left me waiting in the cold, but someone who owed me nothing at all refused to let me suffer alone. When Carmen drove me home from the hospital that afternoon, I should have felt embarrassed, an old woman needing to be rescued by someone who wasn't even family. But instead, I felt relief. Relief that someone cared enough to notice, to stop, and to act. The ride itself was strangely comforting. Carmen talked about her children, Miguel losing a tooth and trying to negotiate with the tooth fairy, little Sophia announcing every week that she wanted to be something new when she grew up. Her laughter filled the car, and for the first time in days, I found myself smiling. By the time she pulled into my driveway, the sun was beginning to set. My house looked the same as it always had, but to me it felt emptier than ever. The newspapers were still stacked on the porch. The flower boxes were wilted. David had promised to pick up the mail, but the mailbox was stuffed full. Carmen insisted on walking me inside. She helped me to my recliner, fetched me water, and made sure my medication was within reach. Then she checked the fridge. 3 frozen meals. A carton of milk that had gone sour. Nothing fresh. Mrs. Henley, she said gently, do you really have someone checking on you? I wanted to lie. I wanted to say my children would be there any moment. But the truth pushed past my lips before I could stop it. No. They keep saying they will, but they don't. She gave me her phone number. You call me for anything. I don't care if it's late or if it's small. If you need something off a high shelf, if you feel unsteady, if you just need to hear a voice, you call. I blinked back tears. Carmen, I can't ask you. You're not asking, she said. I'm offering. That evening, David finally called. His voice was calm, almost casual. Mom, I'm so sorry. Work ran late. I went to the hospital, but they told me you'd already gone home with a nurse. I'll come by tomorrow. We'll spend the day together. Tomorrow. Always tomorrow. I hung up, and for the first time, I didn't feel disappointment. I felt anger. The next morning, my doorbell rang. It was Gladys, casserole dish in hand. She bustled into the kitchen like she always had, heating food, making coffee, acting as though she belonged there. In a way, she did. Patricia, she said, sitting across from me, tell me everything. So I did. I told her about the surgery, the excuses, the endless waiting, the hours outside the hospital. She listened, then leaned forward. Honey, you didn't do anything wrong. You gave those children everything. I've watched you for years. Babysitting, loaning money, cooking meals, covering for them. They got used to it. They came to expect it. And now, they don't even see it as love. They see it as normal. I wanted to protest, but her words rang true. She went on. And do you remember when Robert was dying? Who sat by his side every day? You did. Not them. They showed up when it was convenient, stayed a few minutes, then left. But you never left him. Her words reopened wounds I had buried. During those weeks, I had sat by my husband's bed, holding his hand, whispering prayers, feeding him ice chips. My children came, yes, but always briefly, always with excuses. Too hard to see him like this. Too much going on at home. And now, with me in a hospital bed, they had done the same thing to me. Then Gladys told me something I hadn't expected. Friday afternoon, when you were still in surgery, I saw Michelle at the grocery store with her kids. Laughing. shopping, acting like she had all the time in the world. I even overheard her telling another mom how nice it was that you were being taken care of at the hospital, so she didn't need to worry. The words hit me like a slap. I sat frozen, my fork clattering onto the plate. Taken care of at the hospital. That's all I was to her. A responsibility handed over to strangers. Not her mother. Not her priority. That night, I stared at the family photos on my mantel. Smiling faces. Christmas mornings. Weddings. Birthdays. I had poured myself into those children, and yet, looking at those photos, I felt like a stranger in my own family. Carmen came by again the next day. She carried groceries. Fresh milk, eggs, bread, soup, even a small bouquet of daisies. She placed them on my counter and smiled. You didn't have to, I said, tears threatening again. I wanted to. How are you feeling today? I ended up telling her everything. What Gladys had said, the grocery store story, the hollow ache of realizing how far my children had drifted. She listened, nodding gently. When I finished, she asked me a question that stunned me. Is it really easier to accept their excuses, or is it just what you're used to? I sat in silence. She went on, my grandmother raised me after my parents died. She was everything to me. When she got sick, I moved in with her. I cared for her until the end. That's what taught me. Family isn't always about blood. Sometimes family is about who shows up, who chooses you. Her words sank deep into my heart. That night, I lay awake thinking not about my children, but about Carmen. A woman with her own busy life, her own family, yet she made time for me. She treated me as if I mattered. And in those quiet hours, I began to understand. Sometimes, the people who love you most are not the ones you give birth to. They're the ones who see your pain and refuse to leave you in it. The following week passed, and my children remained distant. David called with more promises. Michelle sent another text filled with apologies and excuses. Robert Jr. stayed silent. But Carmen? She kept showing up. She brought soup. She checked my medications. She sat with me in the evenings, telling me about her children's school projects, showing me their drawings. She even laughed with me, something I hadn't done in weeks. Every small act of hers felt like a balm on wounds that had been festering for years. She reminded me I was worthy of care, of love, of someone's time. One afternoon, she asked, when was the last time your children spent a whole day with you, without rushing, without making excuses? I thought back. Years. Perhaps decades. If you're listening to me right now, I want to ask you something. Have you ever realized that the people who should have stood by you were the very ones who left you waiting? Tell me in the comments. I want to hear your stories too. And if you haven't yet, please subscribe to this channel. We're building a family here, one that listens, one that cares. I kept thinking about that phrase Gladys had repeated, taken care of at the hospital. To my children, that's all I was, a duty handed off. But to Carmen, I was more than that. I was a person worth caring for. And that realization both broke me and began to set me free. Because the truth had been unveiled, I was loved, but not by the ones I had expected. By Monday morning, something in me had shifted. The hip still ached, but it was no longer the source of my pain. What hurt more was the truth I could no longer deny. My children had made me an option, never a priority. That morning, I picked up the phone and called my lawyer, Harold. He'd handled our family's legal matters for years, from my husband's estate to the children's first property purchases. His secretary tried to schedule me for the following week, but I didn't budge. This can't wait, I said. It's about my will. I need to see him today. By the afternoon, Carmen was driving me to his office. She offered to wait in the car, but I shook my head. Come with me. I want you to hear this. Harold greeted us warmly. His hair was silver now, his glasses perched low on his nose, but his voice was steady as always. Patricia, what brings you in? I want to change everything, I told him. I've thought long and hard. My estate, the house, the savings, the insurance, it all needs to go somewhere else. His eyebrows rose. Somewhere else? You've left everything equally to your 3 children. Yes, but they've left me alone, Harold. I gave them decades of love and sacrifice, and when I needed them most, they turned away. The people who cared for me, who sat with me, who carried me when I couldn't stand, aren't my children. They're strangers who chose to act like family. Harold glanced at Carmen, then back at me. Patricia, decisions like this must come from clarity, not anger. Are you sure? I looked him straight in the eye. I have never been more certain. I want Carmen to inherit everything. And I want a trust for her children, Miguel and Sofia, so they have the opportunities my grandchildren already had but never appreciated. Carmen's eyes widened. Mrs. Henley, no. I can't accept that. I never helped you for this. I know, I said softly. And that's exactly why I want to give it to you. Because you didn't ask, you didn't expect, and you didn't make excuses. Harold nodded slowly. We can do this. But there's one thing you should know, your children could try to contest it. If they do, it could drag out in court. Then add a clause, I said firmly. If they contest and lose, they cover all legal fees. Let them think twice before turning my last wishes into another excuse for neglect. Harold smiled faintly, then began drafting the paperwork. But before I signed, I knew I had to face my children. Not to convince them. No, that part of me had died outside the hospital doors, but to let them see clearly what their choices had cost them. So I called each of them and invited them to dinner Wednesday night. For once, I didn't accept excuses. This isn't optional, I told David. Mom, I've got a client dinner. Cancel it. Wednesday. 7 o'clock. Michelle sounded worried. Mom, you don't sound like yourself. Is everything okay? Everything is better than it's been in years. Just come. Robert Jr. muttered. Why? What's this about? You'll see, I told him. And you'll hear it from me, not in whispers later. Wednesday came. For the first time in years, all three of my children sat around the same table. The dining room felt heavy with memory. Birthdays, Sunday dinners, holiday feasts. Tonight, though, there was no laughter, no warmth. I had cooked as best as my healing hip allowed. Spaghetti, garlic bread, a simple salad. Food they all loved as children. Comfort food. I watched them eat in silence, glancing at their phones, shifting uncomfortably. Finally, David spoke. Okay, Mom. What's this about? Why the urgency? I set down my fork and folded my hands. I want to tell you about last week. Michelle sighed. Mom, we already said we're sorry. No, I interrupted. You didn't apologize. You gave excuses. There's a difference. Their eyes dropped to their plates. I pressed on. I woke up from surgery alone. I sat outside the hospital for hours alone. Every time I needed you, I heard the same thing. Work, soccer, errands, meetings. Tomorrow, tomorrow, tomorrow. But do you know what tomorrow feels like when you've just had your hip replaced and you can't even climb into your own bed without help? Tomorrow feels like abandonment. Michelle's eyes filled with tears. David's jaw tightened. Robert Jr. looked away. For decades, I showed up for each of you, I continued. When David had surgery in college, I drove 6 hours through a snowstorm. When Michelle's marriage was falling apart, I watched the twins every weekend so she could go to counseling. When Robert Jr. was drowning in debt, I gave him money without him even asking. I showed up every single time. But when it was my turn, not one of you showed up. David muttered, Mom, we were busy. We have lives. I cut him off. Busy is not an excuse for neglect. Busy is not an excuse for leaving your mother waiting in the cold. Busy is not an excuse for pretending a phone call is enough when someone is recovering from surgery. Michelle wiped her eyes. We can do better. We'll change. I shook my head. Too late. I have given you chance after chance. What I learned last week is that love without action is nothing but words. I will not spend the rest of my life waiting for you to change. I rose slowly and retrieved the folder from the sideboard. I placed it on the table. This is my new will. Everything, my house, my savings, my insurance, goes to Carmen, the woman who treated me like family when my own children did not. I am also setting up a trust for her children, so they can have the education and opportunities they deserve. The silence that followed was deafening. Michelle's mouth fell open. Robert Jr.'s face flushed. David leaned forward, his voice sharp. You're kidding. Mom, you can't be serious. I've never been more serious in my life, I said calmly. Michelle's voice trembled. You'd give everything to a stranger? Carmen is not a stranger. She showed me more care in 1 week than the three of you have in years. She made me feel like I mattered. Robert Jr. snapped. How much are we talking about? Even now, his first thought was money. My heart clenched, but I didn't flinch. About 1.2 million in total. And not a penny of it is yours. David's voice grew desperate. Mom, please. Let us make this right. Don't throw us away. I'm not throwing anyone away. You threw me away when you left me sitting at those hospital doors. You threw me away when you decided deadlines and bake sales were more important than showing up. This isn't revenge. It's truth. Michelle sobbed quietly. David rubbed his forehead, looking older than I'd ever seen him. Robert Jr. crossed his arms, his face blank. I stood, leaning on my cane, steady despite the ache in my hip. I'm done making excuses for you. I'm done lowering the bar for love. You can contest the will if you want. Harold included a clause. But if you lose, you'll pay every legal fee. The choice is yours. They left soon after, each in their own storm of silence. David turned at the door, his voice low. Mom, this isn't over. I looked him straight in the eye. You gave up on me long before tonight. You just didn't notice. When the door closed behind them, I called Carmen. It's done, I said. Her voice was gentle. How do you feel? I looked around my quiet house. For the first time in years, I didn't feel like I was waiting for anything. Free, I told her. For the first time in my life, I feel free. Now let me ask you again, what defines family to you? Is it blood or is it love? I want you to share your thoughts in the comments. Your words might help someone else who feels abandoned. And don't forget to subscribe, because here, every story reminds us that we all matter. In the weeks after that dinner, the silence from my children grew louder than any words they might have spoken. No visits. No phone calls. Only an occasional text that felt more like an obligation than a desire. I thought it would break me, but to my surprise it didn't. Because someone else kept showing up. Carmen. She came with her children, Miguel and Sophia. They brought their crayons, their homework, their laughter. They filled my living room with a noise I hadn't heard in years, the sound of life, unfiltered and genuine. Miguel would sit cross-legged on the rug, proudly showing me his drawings of superheroes, always with exaggerated muscles and crooked smiles. Sophia would curl up beside me, braiding my thinning hair and telling me, with the seriousness only an 8-year-old can muster, that I was now her practice grandma. At first, I laughed. But over time, I stopped thinking of it as pretend. One Sunday afternoon, Carmen arrived with a picnic basket. Come on, Mrs. Henley. We're taking you to the park. I protested. Carmen, my hip isn't ready for adventures. She smiled. That's why we're bringing a blanket. You'll sit and supervise while the kids play. And so I went. Under the wide sky, with Miguel chasing a soccer ball and Sophia collecting dandelions, I felt something I hadn't felt in years, belonging. Carmen sat beside me, telling me about her classes. She had been saving to become a nurse practitioner, but the tuition felt impossible. That night, I made another decision. I called Harold again. Set up a fund for Carmen's schooling. Pay for every class, every book, every exam. Consider it an investment in someone who's already invested in me. When I told Carmen, tears welled in her eyes. Mrs. Henley, why would you do that? Because, I said, squeezing her hand, you've given me back more than money could ever buy, your time, your presence, your love. This is the least I can do. As months passed, Carmen's studies moved forward. She balanced shifts at the hospital, schoolwork, and raising her children. Yet somehow she never forgot me. She brought meals, checked my medications, and invited me to family dinners. Thanksgiving came, and for the first time since Robert passed away, I didn't sit alone. I sat at Carmen's table, Miguel on one side, Sophia on the other, both of them insisting I try their pumpkin pie creations. I felt like I had been adopted into a new family, not because of obligation, but because of choice. Meanwhile, my own children made half-hearted attempts at reconciliation. David stopped by once with a bottle of wine, staying long enough to remind me how busy he was. Michelle called to invite me to Brittany's recital, but when I said I couldn't manage the stairs at the auditorium, she never offered to adjust. Robert Jr. sent a single text. Hope you're okay. I realized something vital then. I had spent years confusing being needed with being valued. My children needed me when I was strong, when I had something to give. But when the roles reversed, when I was the one who needed, they vanished. Carmen, on the other hand, had never needed me for anything. Yet she made me feel valued every single day. One evening, Sophia crawled into my lap and asked, "Grandma Patricia, can you come to my school play next week?" My heart swelled at the title she had given me, Grandma. Not practice anymore. Just Grandma. I wouldn't miss it for the world, I told her. And I didn't. Sitting in that crowded gymnasium, clapping as she delivered her lines about a lost puppy, I felt prouder than I had in years. Christmas that year sealed it for me. Carmen's family insisted I spend the holiday with them. We decorated the tree together, Miguel climbing the ladder while I supervised from below. Sophia and I baked cookies, and she declared mine the best shaped, even when they came out crooked. When we sat around the table, Carmen raised her glass. "To family," she said. And for the first time, I didn't wince at the word. My children still drift on the edges of my life. I don't hate them. I don't even wish them harm. But I no longer wait for them, no longer beg for scraps of attention. My heart has found peace elsewhere. I've learned something that took me 76 years to see clearly. Family is not defined by blood, but by love. It is not about who shares your name, but who shares your burdens, your joys, and your silences. And in Carmen, in Miguel, in Sophia, I have found a family. As I sit here now, hips stronger, spirit lighter, I think about all the years I spent chasing approval from the wrong people. I realize it's never too late to choose differently. To choose love that shows up. To choose people who don't see you as a chore, but as a gift. So that is my renewal. Not a second chance with my children, but a new beginning with my chosen family. Looking back on everything I've been through, I've learned a truth that I want to leave with you. Sometimes family is not the people who share your blood, but the ones who share your pain and refuse to leave your side. I gave my children my whole life, sacrifices, love, and endless devotion. But when I needed them most, they left me waiting. In their place, God sent me Carmen, a woman who owed me nothing but gave me everything. She showed me that loyalty is not guaranteed by birth. It's proven by actions. That lesson was painful, but it was also freeing, because now I know I don't have to beg for love where it isn't offered. I can embrace it where it is given freely. And you, listening to me right now, you deserve the same. If you're an elder like me, maybe you've felt forgotten at times. Maybe you've looked at your phone, hoping it would ring, and been crushed by the silence. I want you to know this. You are not alone. There are people in this world who will value you, who will see your worth, and who will walk beside you, not because they have to, but because they want to. Before I finish, allow me to pray for you. Heavenly Father, I lift up every soul listening right now. For those in their 60s, 70s, 80s, or beyond, I ask you to strengthen their bodies, steady their steps, and give them peace in their hearts. For those who are recovering from surgery, illness, or loss, I pray for swift healing, gentle comfort, and the courage to face each day with hope. For those who feel lonely, remind them they are never truly alone. Surround them with loving companions, friends, neighbors, even strangers, who will honor them, respect them, and make them feel cherished. And for their families, I pray for open eyes and softened hearts, that they may never take for granted the ones who raised them. Lord, bless the hands of every caregiver, nurse, and friend who chooses compassion. May they be rewarded with joy and peace for the kindness they give so freely. And finally, I ask for protection over you, my dear listener. May your nights be restful, your mornings filled with strength, and your days blessed with love that never fails. Amen. Thank you for spending this time with me, for listening to my story, and for allowing me to share my heart. Remember, blood makes you related, but love makes you family. Hold on to the people who prove their love through action, and never be afraid to let go of those who don't. Until next time, this is Patricia, wishing you health, peace, and the kind of love that never leaves you waiting at the door.